I want to start here. I have a lot of questions I want to throw in your direction and pick your brain on this. And the thing I get back to on this, and you mentioned the Missouri game, and my question is, what if Ohio State gets home against Georgia? How does this game go if they're getting home often and Stetson Bennett is under duress for the majority of this football game, Matt Green?
Yeah, I mean, I think if anyone's getting pressure on the quarterback, that's always gonna be challenging for an offense. But Georgia's also first in the country in sacks allowed. Like, I think Stetson's only been sacked like 5-6 times the whole year. So I feel like if there's one thing you're probably confident of as if you're Georgia, it's that Stetson's probably going to have time to make some plays. And part of it is that Stetson also, he's crafty in the pocket, and he eludes the pressure. He scrambles around, makes some plays with his legs. So, yeah, I mean, that's definitely what Ohio State's gonna have to do. I think they're gonna have to first and foremost shut down the run and make Stetson have to beat you. But I mean, there's been a lot of games where he's done just that this year.
How much trouble is Georgia in if they're not able to tack down the field? Because if you remember, I always go back to like that A.D. Mitchell catch, right? The Stetson bomb, where it's like, oh, they came back to life. We were like, okay, Georgia has life here. And obviously we know what happened after that. I wonder if AD's not ready to go, and he's still a little bit hobbled, and there still is just not that downfield threat to take advantage of the Ohio State secondary, which is littered with 4 and 5 stars, but they haven't been good. So that's the area where Georgia can attack the most. Is the linebackers and the defensive ends for Ohio State have been very good this year, and the front seven's been very good. I mean, we've obviously seen multiple sack, interception, touchdowns from this Buckeyes team in important moments. So the front seven is strong for Ohio State. Where they're not strong is the secondary. And I wonder for you, like, how worried are you of the receivers not taking advantage of this this Achilles heel for the Ohio State defense?
I think Georgia will definitely take advantage of that because they haven't played with A.D. Mitchell basically all season. Like, the Oregon game is the only game that they got a healthy A.D. Mitchell. So this guy's had another month to get healthy, and he did play in the LSU game. He did play a little bit in the last couple games of the season. But, I mean, if he's healthy, that sets Georgia's offense off even better than it's been. And like, I mean, McConkey has caught plenty of deep balls in his couple years at Georgia. Like, Arian Smith has been a deep ball threat. So I don't think Georgia really – I think they can just beat you so many different ways that I don't think their offense really relies on anything, honestly. Like, you look at the Tennessee game and the Oregon game, like, they didn't really run the ball particularly well in either of those games. And it was the passing offense that just diced up the other team. So I think Georgia – and – especially like in terms of big plays, like you just dump it off to Brock Bowers, you dump it off to Darnell Washington. Like, Georgia can kill you going 10 yards at a time down the field too. It's not like they have to have these big plays. Like, but the fact that and I feel like Michigan's kind of a similar team like that, and the fact that they were just gouging Ohio State the way they did, like it seemed like they had to do everything to stop the run, and Michigan was just killing them with the big plays through the passing game, and then by the end of the game, they were just gashing them for 80-yard touchdown runs. So I just look at Michigan. It's hard to really know too much about Ohio State because I just feel like this schedule was just so weak. Like, Penn State and Michigan are really the only teams on the schedule that I respect. Like, Notre Dame was good, but the week 1 Notre Dame that they played, that team was awful. Like, that's the team that lost to Marshall. Like, that was before they made the quarterback change. Like, that team was terrible, and Ohio State didn't look particularly great in that one either. But that's a long week 1. That's a long time ago. So you look at the team you've seen most recently is the one against Michigan, and Georgia feels like just a better version of Michigan. It feels like Michigan is honestly the team that people kind of pretend Georgia is, because Michigan's the team that relies on running the ball. Like, if you stop Michigan on the ground, and we're obviously going to get to Michigan TCU, if if you stop Michigan on the ground, like I don't really know what they can do against you. Like Georgia, if you stop Georgia on the ground, I think Stetson and the passing game, I think they can make plays. Also, if you're taking away the pass, I think Georgia's run game is good enough to carry you too. So I'm just not sure how Ohio State and with just those 2-game sample size of Penn State and Michigan, like they played 3 top 50 offenses the entire season, and Toledo was one of them. So it's hard, and Penn State had some success on offense. Michigan obviously has a lot of success on offense. So it's tough to know exactly how good this Ohio State team is, but like the secondary definitely looks like a weakness, especially what you're used to seeing from Ohio State, with just first-round pick after first-round pick, it feels like, at corner.
I like it. Last big, broad question for this matchup for you, Matt Green. And I don't think this is as big of an issue now that we know Henderson's not going to play in this game for Ohio State. But they're also just up in the air with their number 2 in Williams, and we'll see if he plays. I don't think has been confirmed if he's playing or not. So it looks like it might be a lot of Hayden in this one for the Buckeyes. They might have to rely a lot on him, and he's not a big dude. And I'm a little nervous if I'm a Buckeye fan about relying a lot on him to run between the tackles and charge through the B gap here against the Dawgs and Jalen Carter. But what if the Buckeyes are able to run on this Georgia defense? How does that change your feelings about how this game will go if you notice that's what's happening in this game?
I think that's really the only way that Ohio State wins this game, is if they're able to run the ball. Like if they're one-dimensional, I just don't think there's any chance. Like as good as CJ Stroud is, like I don't think there's any chance that him throwing the ball like 40, 50 times. Like I don't think there's any way that that's a good thing for Ohio State. I think they have to be balanced in order to beat Georgia. Like because I think a lot of people are going to point to that LSU game and see, Georgia gave up 500 yards through the air against LSU. And I just don't see that at all. Like, honestly, I don't see that as a blueprint in any way for Georgia, only because they were up 35-10 at halftime of that game. So it's like, obviously it's not over in the third quarter, but I mean, you got to take it with a grain of salt that Georgia's just sitting back and just not giving up big plays, and they got a backup in and they threw the ball 50 times. Like, so I think, even if you look at CJ Stroud throughout his career, like if he attempts I think a lot was made under like when Jake Fromm was the quarterback at Georgia, like when he attempted 30 times, like they never won or something like that, or some sort of stat like that. Like if CJ Stroud throws the ball 40 times, like that's not a good thing for Ohio State. You go back to this year and last year, like he attempted 40 passes one time this year, and it was the Michigan game, and they lost. And he attempted 40 passes against Michigan last year, and they lost. He attempted 54 against Oregon last year, and they lost. Like they did beat Utah in that shootout, but that's not a good thing for Ohio State. Like as good as C.J. Stroud and these playmakers for Ohio State are, even without Jackson Smith and Jigba, it's Ohio State, and they just have dudes outside. But I think it's hard to see, without TreVeyon Henderson, it's hard to see Ohio State having too much success on the ground. I think that's going to be how I think this game starts to get away from them, is just that Georgia's going to cause them to be one-dimensional, I think. And it's going to be all about the passing game. And I think if you just put it in the air enough times, like you've seen with this Georgia secondary, like they're going to get some turnovers. Like Ringo, I think Ringo's been criticized a lot this year, kind of been a little underwhelming. I think maybe a little too much is made of it, but he's not necessarily the top 10, top 15 pick that I think people